The report concludes that the Philippines' attempt to break through the territorial limits defined by a series of treaties with legal force and to extend its territory to Huangyan Dao and certain maritime features of the Nansha Chuandao lacks historical evidence, manifestly contravenes the rules of international law concerning the acquisition of territory, and is devoid of historical and legal foundation.
Beijing hit back at Manila's sea claims with a new report, issuing a detailed legal and historical critique aimed at undermining the Philippines' assertions and signaling that China intends to contest maritime narratives through documentation as well as naval presence. China moved to tear down the Philippine sea narrative amid Taiwan tensions, using the report to challenge Manila's interpretations of boundaries and rights while simultaneously reinforcing Beijing's broader regional posture as cross-strait frictions rise. Beijing's new legal blitz challenges Manila in the South China Sea, marshalling archival evidence, treaty readings, and maritime law arguments to frame the dispute in terms favorable to China and to complicate Philippine efforts to solidify international support. China says history and law do not back Manila's sea claims, presenting an alternate reconstruction of past usage, maps, and legal precedents intended to delegitimize Filipino positions and strengthen Beijing's claims to maritime features and waters. Beijing fired a legal salvo timed to maximize diplomatic and informational effect, a move some analysts interpret as part of a broader strategy to shape regional legitimacy and reduce international resistance ahead of any potential cross-strait escalation. A new report from China debunked the Philippines' territorial claims in the South China Sea, presenting a systematic rebuttal that sought to undercut Manila's legal and historical arguments while reframing the dispute in Beijing's favor. The China Institute for Marine Affairs released the report, Reuters reported on July 8, an announcement that was quickly circulated through government channels and picked up by regional media as part of a coordinated information push. The paper is titled Historical and Legal Critique of the Philippines' Territorial Claims, a name that signals its dual focus on archival evidence and juridical interpretation to challenge the basis of Manila's maritime assertions. The report reviewed how the Philippines' territorial boundaries were formed and later expanded, walking through colonial-era agreements, post-war arrangements, and subsequent diplomatic developments to argue that Manila's present claims exceed earlier precedents. The report said Manila tried to push territorial limits beyond earlier treaty borders, alleging that modern Filipino interpretations selectively reinterpret historical documents and legal instruments to justify broader maritime entitlements.
The report concludes that the Philippines' attempt to break through the territorial limits defined by a series of treaties with legal force and to extend its territory to Huangyan Dao and certain maritime features of the Nansha Chuandao lacks historical evidence, manifestly contravenes the rules of international law concerning the acquisition of territory, and is devoid of historical and legal foundation. The Philippines' territorial expansion attempts undermine the international legal system and pose a threat to regional peace and stability, as well as the post-war order arrangement. The full text of the report can be viewed and downloaded from the official media platforms of the Ministry of Natural Resources and the website of the China Institute for Marine Affairs.
The Philippines' claims over Huangyan Dao and Nansha features distort history, the paper argued, asserting that Manila's narrative selectively interprets events and documents to create a broader territorial picture that, in the author's view, does not withstand close archival scrutiny. Chinese researchers claim those historical sources have little legal probative value, arguing that many cited records are anecdotal, contextually ambiguous, or irrelevant to modern legal standards and therefore should not form the basis for expansive maritime entitlements. The report concludes expansion attempts contravene international rules on territory acquisition, maintaining that unilateral moves to extend sovereignty or maritime zones run counter to established treaty norms and customary principles governing territorial change. Beijing's position is that treaties with legal force set clear limits that Manila cannot exceed, and the paper repeatedly emphasizes binding agreements and historical boundary settlements as constraining frameworks that, in China's view, invalidate recent Philippine claims. The Chinese report seeks to undercut the Philippines' South China Sea legal narrative, aiming to shift the debate from military posturing to documentary and juridical contestation in hopes of weakening Manila's diplomatic leverage. This report from China gained significance in the wake of China's claims on Taiwan, because attempts to solidify maritime justifications dovetail with broader efforts to assert control over adjacent waters as cross-strait tensions rise. Remember, Beijing views Taiwan as part of China and lays claim to waters around the territory, a stance that frames regional maritime disputes within Beijing's larger sovereignty and reunification narrative. Speculation of an impending Taiwan invasion has increased since Trump's trip to China in May, with some observers linking heightened military and legal signaling to the diplomatic exchanges and strategic messaging surrounding that visit. Xi Jinping openly warned the US against interfering over Taiwan, warning of a conflict, language meant to deter external intervention by tying escalatory consequences to perceived interference in what Beijing regards as an internal matter. China is further strengthening its naval power with a significant new upgrade to its Type 003 Huangyan aircraft carrier. The latest enhancement reportedly makes China only the second nation after the United States to operate an aircraft carrier equipped with an EMLS launch system. China's Type 003 Huangyan carrier is also expected to become the world's first aircraft carrier fitted with an anti-torpedo torpedo defense system. Details of the Huangyan carrier's newest upgrade were revealed in a report published by the South China Morning Post. If confirmed, China's ATT system would become the first operational carrier-based anti-torpedo defense system of its kind anywhere in the world. First of its kind, carrier-based anti-torpedo torpedo. Hard kill defense. Intercepts and destroys incoming torpedoes before impact. Counters biggest threat. Designed to defeat heavyweight submarine-launched torpedoes. Rapid response. Launches within seconds after detecting an incoming underwater threat. Smart interceptor. Uses active sonar to track and pursue hostile torpedoes. High agility. Engineered to match sudden maneuvers by incoming enemy torpedoes. Carrier protection. Provides a final underwater defensive shield for the aircraft carrier. Strategic impact. May significantly reduce dependence on escort anti-submarine warfare vessels. Aircraft carriers remain highly vulnerable to torpedo attacks, which are among the most difficult threats to detect and intercept underwater. China reportedly tested an early version of its ATT system in 2016, but analysts describe this year's upgraded variant as world-class. An Indian Navy veteran told Eurasian Times that China's ATT system represents a highly credible and potentially game-changing defensive capability. A retired Indian Navy official said, and I quote, "The Chinese ATT system that the article talks about is primarily an anti-torpedo torpedo. It is feasible to launch this from an aircraft carrier because all it requires is torpedo launcher tubes. However, the aircraft carrier will also need to have sonar for the detection of enemy submarines and torpedoes, without which this torpedo launcher will be of no use. A torpedo launched from a US submarine is detected by the Chinese aircraft carrier's sonar. The sonar is integrated with the anti-torpedo launcher, which launches this ATT towards the incoming torpedo. The active homing head of this ATT detects, tracks, and homes onto the incoming torpedo before destroying it." Analysts told the South China Morning Post that conflict could become increasingly likely if China launches military action against US allies such as Taiwan or the Philippines. The ATT system was reportedly developed in response to advanced US Navy submarines, including the Seawolf class and the future SSN-X fleet. The US Navy has yet to field an operational anti-torpedo defense system, making China's capability one of the first of its kind. China's ATT system. Key features. Platform. Installed aboard the Type 003 Huangyan aircraft carrier. Launcher. 6 324mm lightweight torpedo tubes. Interceptor. Dedicated anti-torpedo torpedo. Guidance. Broadband active sonar. Propulsion. Pump jet thruster with rocket booster. Communication. Two-way underwater acoustic data link. Warhead. Shaped charge combined with water shockwave effect. Future upgrade. Possible supercavitating variant reportedly capable of speeds up to 200 knots. The latest upgrade to the Type 003 Huangyan comes shortly after China's recent ballistic missile launch demonstration. Fresh details emerged after China on July 6 launched a ballistic missile in the Pacific, with new reporting piecing together timelines, trajectories, and official statements that shed light on the exercise's scope and implications. The type of missile is unconfirmed, but candidates include the JL-2 or the more modern JL-3 SLBMs, each of which would indicate different ranges and performance characteristics that analysts are using to narrow down the probable system tested. Only China's Type 094 nuclear ballistic submarines can carry such missiles at present, meaning the launch, if from an SLBM, likely involved one of the country's operational Jin-class boats rather than a yet-to-enter-service platform. China has at least 6 Type 094 boats, with reports of 2 more under construction, a fleet buildup that contributes to Beijing's emerging sea-based nuclear posture by increasing patrol and launch redundancy. A new Type 096 nuclear ballistic submarine is in development but not yet in service. and once operational it would likely field more advanced missiles and further expand the survivability and reach of China's undersea deterrent. The test highlights the ongoing expansion of China's nuclear arsenal and submarine forces, underscoring a deliberate effort to modernize and diversify delivery systems across sea, land, and air.